Cabin fever.
Hey, my name's Colin Walsh. I'm an Irish writer living in Belgium. Very happy to be taking part in the Cabin Fever series for Desperate Literature Bookshop in Madrid. One of the things that's getting me through this entire episode period that we're all in is reading short story anthologies. Now, one of the reasons for that is because sometimes you can go through a run where you're reading a lot of novels, sometimes you go through a period where you're reading a lot of story collections, but when you're reading an anthology you get this, the kind of chocolate box effect where basically you're going from different writer to different writer, different style of writing and different style of storytelling to another. And very often what ends up happening is you read work by writers that you already love and admire, but you also find a lot of new interesting work by people that maybe you've never even heard of. So there are obviously an infinite number of short story anthologies out there, but I'm going to talk about two specifically that I'd really recommend people to read as readers, but especially if you are someone who's interested in writing at all. So the first would be this anthology, The Long Gaze Back, which was edited by Sinead Leeson, who is an incredible writer herself. So this is an anthology of Irish women writers. It was designed pretty explicitly as an attempt to correct a certain bias in the Irish canon towards male writers. It's not an Irish specific problem, but basically what you get in here are all new stories by contemporary writers like Anne Enright, Emer McBride, and you also get work by other writers who have historically tended to be written out of the record of Irish literature, so figures like Nora Hoult, for example. And you are getting a huge range of different styles of storytelling, from the very traditional realist modes to more experimental, spiky, exciting stuff like June Caldwell, for example. So this is a really great book just to explore as a reader, full stop, but also as a writer for reasons that I'll get to a little bit later. And the other collection I'd recommend, or the other anthology, is New American Stories. So this is a series, but I'm recommending the version that was edited by Ben Marcus. And the reason I'm recommending this is as a reader, because you're going to get so much good stuff in there. There are so many fantastic stories by so many of the greatest American writers at work today. So you've got great stories by George Saunders, Mary Gateskill, Joy Williams, Lydia Davis, Dennis Johnson's in there, Don DeLillo. It's kind of like hit after hit after hit. So just as obviously it's a tome, but it's really well worth looking into. So just as readers, I highly recommend both of these anthologies. They're incredibly rich. Really, you find lots of great stuff in there. And also it'd be a great way to support independent bookshops by ordering from them. But then there's the other aspect, which is as a writer, and why would I recommend these ones in particular for people who are trying to write? So you probably know the English author John McGregor. So John McGregor, he's written several highly acclaimed novels, including most recently Reservoir 13. But he teaches creative writing in the University of Nottingham in England, and one of the really cool and generous things that he does with his class is that he puts up the notes from his class online as a newsletter that you can subscribe to. So it's just a class notes newsletter, and he in each class in one class he might focus on dialogue, and then in another class it will be about endings, and in another it's paragraphs, and in another about how you create a sense of movement in a story, or shifting from place to place or from one timeline to another. And when he does this newsletter, he sends out a lot of links in the newsletters to interviews with the authors that he's talking about, and to some of the stories themselves. But basically, the vast majority of the stories that he explicitly refers to and uses as the jumping off point for those classes that you can get online are to be found in these two books. So if you are someone like me who's trying to write but has never studied creative writing and is looking for something, some sort of teacher or something like that, I don't know. I'm always looking for something like that. Then the John McGregor tiny letter newsletter is a really good way of doing it. And I'm going to include a link to the previous editions of that in the description of this video, as well as links to both of these anthologies, The Long Ace Back, edited by Sinead Gleason, and New American Stories, edited by Ben Marcus. And if you want to get in touch about, if you're finding it difficult to get in touch with it, to get your hands on any of the stories or whatever, you can always get in touch with me on Twitter or something like that, and we can see if we can arrange something, I don't know. Alright, that's it. Bye!